India is now being charged a reciprocal tax of 27%.
Yeah.
Now maybe India's garment export to the US might be lucrative. Will the markets be affected in the short term, in the medium term, in the long term even?
So it is not useful to axle any consumer.
Why are countries not allowing goods to be imported? No import duty.
Government wants more money, right?
It's a recession going to actually land in the US, and
They want their domestic institutions that thrive.
US could have bad times, and if US is having bad times, it will go on to the entire world. Market has not liked what Trump is doing.
Did we rebalance our portfolio because of the Trump's tariff?
Whoever is active enough, whoever is intelligent enough, whoever is smart enough, actually use these opportunities and build something very good out of it.
So this is the 20th episode of the Aftermarket Podcast. But there's something not a lot of viewers know about, which is that we did entire mock episodes before we launched the first podcast. And in all of those episodes, we had a single common topic across all of them. It was the US tariffs which were incoming. And starting from November, Trump, ever since he got elected, he had said one single thing. A tariff or an import duty of 10% for every single good which is imported into the US, no matter which country they're coming from. And finally, it has actually been implemented after 6 months and the 20 episodes of the Aftermarket Podcast. So I think that's what we're going to discuss today. Trump's tariffs and yes, the impact on the Indian market. The Indian equity market has fell by 0.5%. US market is down by more than 3%. Indian IT stocks are down by 4%. So yes, let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, today we are shooting this video on a Thursday evening, but again on Wednesday evening, the Trump coming up with a huge board with huge list of countries, and then what they're being tariffed. No, that list is there, and then what they are going to put import duties, that is they have listed. It's an interesting board. I mean, he did that actually.
So let's start with the official 20th episode of the Aftermarket Podcast. My name is Ajay Ajit. This is Nihal Bandapalli.
Hi.
And this is Sharik Shamsin, CEO and co-founder of MarketFeed.
Hi. So I think today's discussion should be all about, because people are concerned about when this came out, will the markets be affected in the short term, in the medium term, in the long term even? Is a recession going to actually land in the US? And there is this famous saying, right? If the US catches cold, the entire world sneezes.
Yeah.
So if a recession is to hit the US, then is it going to be troubled time for all of the markets and investors, including us? Then are there interesting sectors which could either benefit or maybe go bad because of whatever is happening? So I think Indian stock market investors are really concerned. One is concerned, they're also looking at opportunities. What if there are good opportunities which they can leverage on? So all of these things are what I think we should be discussing today.
Exactly, and that is what we are seeing in the market also. Today, if you are seeing US market, Nasdaq is already down by 4-5%. Even the US Dow Jones is really down. And even if you look into the GDP numbers, right, last 2 quarters were not that great. The GDP is slowing down. So again, people are in fear there. Recession could hit. They could lose their jobs. The actual fear is real. But again, we should also understand what is this tariff, because probably Indians and all the other economies understand the word import duty, but they don't understand the word tariff, right? So we should actually make them understand what is a tariff.
Yeah. So I think we should do this in a very structured, fundamental manner, right? So we should start from what is even a tariff, because that's a word which is being thrown around a lot, right? So we should understand what tariffs are. So in that journey, we should probably understand what import duties are even.
Yeah.
And then why do countries even impose import duties to begin with? And then what are the pros and cons of the tariff which is being imposed? I think this podcast should be entirely about breaking down this entire episode, understanding what is this and what could happen. And I think that is where we should go. And to begin with, let me talk about what tariffs are.
Yeah.
And let me not use the word tariffs anymore, because that's not a word which we are used to. The word we are used to is import duty.
Yeah.
Yep.
Obviously, in a country, goods from other countries are imported so that people in that country could consume it. Obviously, right, we are all consuming products in our life which are not manufactured in India, but which are manufactured in other countries, and we import it and use it.
Correct.
Very normal behavior. So when this happens normally in a country, that country's government would say that when you're importing stuff from outside the country, if the cost is X, pay some percentage as import duty on top of the price of the product.
Yeah.
This is what is import duty.
So what I can understand from this is in our regular day-to-day lives, we try to buy so many goods and services, then we pay GST on it. You know that GST is collected by government, making some extra revenue out of it. So on a larger scale, if our country is buying something from, some other countries, or we are exporting something, if government is charging a universal GST, is called a tariff, is what I can understand.
Something like that, yeah. And that money actually goes to the government. It is a revenue sort of a thing for the government.
So it is not useful to actual any consumer.
It is not useful to the consumer. In fact, it works against the consumer because the final landing price for the product for the consumer increases.
Correct.
Because there's this element of import duty as well. So again, breaking things down. So to a country like India, when people are importing stuff, there is an extra element of price which adds on top of it called import duty, which goes to the government, and that is what import duty is. But I think that's where the definition is not what is important. We always say, right, start with why. In life, we have to be very clear on why are things there. So why is import duty even there to begin with? I mean, why should it even be there? Why are countries not allowing goods to be imported with no import duty?
Yeah, I'll tell you the fun answer. Fun answer is that government wants more money, right? So why does the government take taxes, right? Government wants to make money. That's a source of income for them. So even Trump, even the US, even the Indian government, whenever they import, they keep a import duty. It's the same thing. They want to earn more money.
Yeah, exactly right. This is not even helping the citizens of the country. They are paying more money. Then why would a government do this to their citizens? And, being a triple major economics student, you should be able to answer this.
Yeah, so I'll give you the very simple answer. Just like why any government wants to tax its citizens. Why do they do that? They want to make more money. So this is a serious answer. Government wants to make more money. They keep a tax. Similarly, import duty is just a tax. Government can make more money. But in a second scenario, I'll tell you a story. So post-independence India, British left us. We were left scrambling as a country to build our economy, right? A lot of industries which were not even working, right? So we wanted our industries to be in a scenario where they could thrive, right? Where they could, without any external pressure from countries which are already established, like the British, the US, we wanted our companies to also start manufacturing. So what did we do at that time? We became a very protectionist economy.
Okay.
That means we closed out all imports. We made imports very, very difficult to bring into India. High import duties maybe not even allowed. So what happened? Our industry slowly started picking up, right? So because there is demand in the country, people need, let's say, a TV. They need a speaker. So they have the demand. They'll start buying from the Indian companies itself. So our industry started thriving. And this is one of the fundamental reasons why Trump today or India 50, 70 years ago introduced these policies, right? They want their domestic institutions, their domestic manufacturers to thrive. And that is always a reason for a trade import duty which is levied by the government.
Yeah.
No, that is a good place where I would ask then, why do countries open up? Open up with some import duty or no, but again, the fact that when you close your economy, you're in a protectionist mode where you want your domestic companies to do really well with no competition from external companies. That's what he's saying. But when you open up, which happened in India in 1990s, the very, very famous liberalization of the economy which happened. So then you're opening up to other countries and companies from other countries who could come and then go against whatever you said so far. So what happens then?
So even in the 1990s, when India became a liberalized economy, our economy actually thrived, right? If you're looking at it, we were able to import, Indians were able to import a lot and we started spending. And then the logic there is, hey, our domestic institutions would have been destroyed. But what actually turned out to happen was that because of the increased competition, right, our industry started innovating. Let's say before 1990s, which auto manufacturer existed in India? The Ambassador. And I don't even know, very random shit automobiles existed in India. But after that, you can see that the foreign companies started coming in. US, Ford started coming in. Japanese vehicles like Suzuki started coming in. So all this created a scenario where our entire auto industry is where it is at today. So over the long term, opening up the economy is also good because the increase in competition will push the companies to perform better.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Given globalization is happening and people are having and getting access to whatever is happening around the world, they cannot be kept inside a country where things are closed, like
Yeah.
North Korea maybe.
Yeah.
Government cannot have a state where saying people that you cannot import stuff from outside.
Yeah.
Which would mean that people, and if the companies in the country are not developing well enough, the people are deprived of high quality and modern and luxurious amenities, and then people would revolt against the government maybe.
Yeah.
So I think there is a natural tendency from human beings to get better,
Yeah.
to get their hands on what is shining and what is the best right now. And for that, keeping an economy closed forever doesn't make sense as something
And there is
I understand.
And there is a natural tendency for companies to do only what is required so that they make the maximum
Right.
profit.
So when these competitors come from outside and their products are flooding the market, these companies are forced to innovate, like you said. So there, what I think about is, it is normally said that you're the average of 5 people around you.
Yeah. Yep.
So when these Indian automobile manufacturers, because we took that example, when they started having peers like Hyundai or good manufacturers or advanced people who were ahead
Yeah.
compared to them in the race, coming to the country and then manufacturing, then it became like, hey, we also should get better. So maybe that kind of
and
makes sense.
Also, there's another element to it. So every economy thrives when they start exporting goods and services to others across the world. So if you're not playing fair, if you're having huge import duties, other countries will also start seeing you as a bad actor.
You will not be able to export to other countries if you are not
Exactly.
importing from other
Yes.
countries,
Yeah.
or if you have high import duties.
Yes, even if you look at India's IT sector, it thrived after 1990s and liberalization. So countries see you as a favorable trade partner and they start partnering with you more and your exports increase. So that's also a major factor why countries open up to more trade possibilities and try to cut down their import duties.
So then a natural question there is, then why don't you open up completely? Why even keep any import duty for that matter? No import duties. Import as much as you want and people can have great products at lower cost and great life, right?
Yeah, but then there could be places where bad actors could take advantage of this. Let's say what is happening right now, the Chinese government is heavily incentivizing battery production, EV battery production and EV manufacturing in the country. So they are able to produce EVs at a scale and cost that no one in the world is capable of today. So if we allow Chinese EVs to come into the Indian market, I understand, yes, competition and all the logics, but then the actual real answer is that the Indian automotive sector will be dead in just a few months.
Got it. So which means that import duty has that element of protectionism still.
Yes.
So while we were not having 100% import duty, but we were closed to external players coming in, then we opened up with some import duty, and one angle is again protectionism.
Yes.
If there is no import duty, any great product at low cost could come and kill all our Indian companies. So
Yeah.
Yes, that
So
could happen.
based
I like
on
that.
your both discussions, what I can understand, right? So to simply put out, import duties are there to protect your kid or your child or your businesses in your
Domestic companies.
your domestic companies in your country, and you try to make it closed only for that particular sector till something starts there and it becomes in a stage where it can compete with global brands, and then you reduce your tariffs to a stage where they can also come in so that it becomes a level playing field, and then you have to survive on your own, you have to invent on your own, you have to become more. I think that is what happened in the recent budget also. I think they put a lot of tariff on solar panels import so that our Indian companies can start to manufacture, innovate, help them grow to a stage where they probably will reduce tariffs at that point, and then global competition kicks in and it becomes a level playing field. That is what all I can understand from this context.
That's a very good point. No, so it is, when we have been talking about import duties, but a nuance there is, import duty is on like product wise.
Yeah.
For example, solar panel, it is some percent. For some other product, it is some other percent,
Yeah.
depending on the maturity of that industry and manufacturers
Correct.
in India. So
Yeah.
very interesting. So as we keep on discussing, whenever we come to discussing stuff about the economy, we say it is a very, very brittle, volatile, sensitive
Yeah.
thing, and you have to be very careful about it. So this again sounds like another tool with
Yeah.
which the government is protecting the economy. Very interesting. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, but again, when we are talking about this is just a import duty or a tariff that we are talking. But Trump specifically comes and says, reciprocal tariff. So again, we should also like put some line. What is a reciprocal tariff?
No, so it's nothing but Trump's very funny way of saying tit for tat.
Yeah.
Right? So he's saying, hey, you as a country, if you are imposing so much import duty on me, in his terms, tariff on me, I'll also impose similar tariff on you. So that is what he is saying, and that is what reciprocal tariff is. So I'll reciprocate the tariff that you are imposing on me on you as well.
Yeah, nothing major other than just the word's meaning.
Yeah, but I think that's a scary situation for US themselves, right? Because they are pointing a finger towards someone who's pointing a finger towards them, and then that can escalate to a ego war between companies. A trade war can happen, and I think the place where US currently is right now, they are the major importers. They don't export much; they import lot of stuff from every other country, and if they start having this trade wars with every country, put reciprocal tariffs. Let's say now India, I think is having tariffs around 50%, but they are tariffing us with 26%. But let's say they have something else with China, something else with Vietnam, something else with Mexico. If they start this ugly war, that can turn into very bad stage.
Let me just make sure everyone understands this well. India is said to have, Trump says that India imposes a import duty of 54% on international US goods.
Yeah.
And India is now being charged a reciprocal tax of 27%.
Yeah.
Even they're not clear. It's funny. In one of the docs, they say 26, the other says 27. It's even funny like
so
that.
So that means whatever is being imported into India, we are charging them 54% tax, and whatever we are exporting to them, they are going to charge 27%.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and just going back to the fact that US can't even afford these trade wars again, like what you said, because they are major consumer-facing country. They are huge consumers, and their households actually spend, according to some data or some facts we've read, right? They spend $77,000 yearly on consuming goods and services. That's like almost 60 70 lakhs.
Yeah.
Indians don't even earn that much, how much they are spending on goods and services. That is huge.
And I think actually this is a scare tactic.
Yeah.
I think Trump wants to bring everyone onto the negotiating table. They want to make other countries buy more of US goods. I think that will also come up in our discussion. They want other countries to start buying US goods more aggressively, and for them to be ready to come to a discussion. This strong-handed, big announcement needed to happen. So even though the US market has fallen by 3.5%, I think they're a bit okay, right? They needed this to happen so that people will come into the negotiating table, they'll be serious, and maybe things will start to move for them.
I think the objective of Trump here is nothing but to maybe give a wake-up call to companies within US who are maybe now not manufacturing in the US, who should be manufacturing in the US, who should be focusing on US, and maybe make America great again. So I think that is what he's trying to do, because when he is doing this, a lot of people are calling it stupid as well, right? And calling that, hey, a recession could come and all of those. Let's keep that aside. I'm trying to understand what could be the objective here, and it could be this, because let's do scenario planning here. Two things could happen, right? So he's imposing more and more tariffs on other countries. What could happen? These countries could come to the table for negotiating and could say that, hey, we are open to reducing import tariff from your country.
Correct.
Then what will happen? All the companies who are manufacturing in the US will be able to export to all these countries who have now reduced their import duty.
Yeah, they'll become more, they'll get more sales from all these countries.
Correct. Yeah. Which means that these companies who are manufacturing in the US is winning. Yeah. Their sales are increasing and they are thriving and things are getting better. So this is a winning situation for the US. Now, what is the other scenario? These countries, when Trump is saying that, hey, we have increased tariff for you. Yeah. These countries are saying, okay, increase. We will not do anything.
Correct. And obviously, the prices of the goods and services in the US is going to increase.
Exactly, because these countries are now tariffed higher because of Trump. So their imports into the US will increase. So people in the US will not buy those products.
Correct.
Rather, people in the US will start buying goods manufactured by US companies in the US. So again, it is a winning situation for companies in the US and thus US as a country. So I think Trump is taking a very bold bet. It's a very strong thing. Again, it's sort of a trade war sort of a situation. It can go wrong as well. Yeah. But I think he's taking that bold bet to do things which could be good for US eventually.
Exactly. Now, even if you look into what US majorly exports, right? It's mostly raw crude that they export, and mostly defense is what they are named for. Like, that is the major exports they do. So maybe with this, probably they're going to incentivize their own citizens, their own people, to start manufacturing other goods and services. Maybe they doesn't produce anything. So maybe this is like a wake up call to the whole country, and that is what he's trying to do. And only time will tell if that is going to turn out well.
But there's a slight problem here. So the US, the cost of manufacturing anything in the US is going to be much higher than any other country across the world. That is why the US outsources things like garment manufacturing, your IT outsourcing, everything.
Even
to countries.
iPhone manufacturing. for
iPhone
that
Exactly.
matter.
manufacturing to countries like China, Vietnam, India,
Yeah.
right? And that's how. And that's what's happening across the world.
Yeah.
And even if you're looking at the trading situation between India and the the US imports nearly $80 billion worth of goods into the country
Yeah.
from India. Okay. And for perspective, they only export half of that into India. So India is in a unique situation where we are very dependent on the US because the US imports a lot from us, but they don't export a lot to India. So I think I agree. Trump wants to be in a scenario where they can bring India into the conversation table, negotiating table, and make India buy more US goods, right?
Yeah.
Say that, hey, not only should you reduce the tariffs, you should also buy more from our country so that our domestic companies also start thriving. That could happen, yes.
Yeah, I think that is only what is being discussed in the FTA that they are planning also, right? So on defense goods that US exports a lot, the agriculture products, the pharma sector, even the IT sector, I think they are trying to like exclude the tariffs on these sectors which US majorly can export. I think that is what the negotiation is also happening.
Yes, so we already established that India is heavily dependent on the US. They are one of India's largest export destinations. Nearly 20% of all India's goods exports, goes to the US. So let's say things like electronics equipment, your gems, precious stones, these are all heavily imported by the US. But the question still remains, so what, right? What happens even if this trade tariff war happens? What is going to happen? Maybe something good could happen to India. What bad things could happen to India? Let's discuss that.
Okay, so understanding what you're saying, let's say the gemstone market or the textile garment market or etc., whatever you have mentioned, if because of the tariffs, these prices are going to increase in US. These products demand could come down, affecting our Indian companies, and if they are listed, their shares could fall. There's a huge ripple effect that this can happen.
And there is also the fact that many of these electronics manufacturers in India are foreign companies. Let's take even the case of iPhone manufacturing in India.
Yeah.
So if they see that India is being taxed very higher, they'll shut shop, right? They'll go to some other country which has a lower tax, or they'll go back to the US.
Correct.
So when all of this happens, the number of jobs, the money flowing through the Indian economy, that could slow down, and it will become a big problem.
And also the fact that if US goes into recession, if this turns out in a bad way, US could have bad times, and if US is having bad times, then it will go on to the entire world, and eventually we could also have bad times. Is another bad thing of all these which I can think about.
US market falling 3.5% is no joke.
Yeah.
And everyone is saying that because of these tariffs, the US consumers are going to spend less, and because of that, a recession will come up in the US. That's why the US market is falling. So if it was all great, the US market should have rallied, and the
Right.
Indian markets and global markets should have crashed.
Correct.
But no, that's not what is
Yeah, so
happening.
it's famously said, right? Price normally discounts and would talk about everything.
Yeah.
So if price is down today, it kind of says that market has not liked what Trump is doing. Anyway, speaking about some good things from this, which I can think about, is the fact that, I mean, people do not know this. I think people do not know this. IT is not really affected.
Yeah.
Even though Nifty IT was down 4% in a day after the Trump news coming out, IT is not affected. I think it's a good thing given that India exports a lot of IT to the US. I think it is definitely a good thing.
All services. So it's coming out that services can't really be tariffed, right?
Yeah.
So IT being a service, a sharing of no physical goods is happening, right? So in that case, it's very hard to tariff, and that's what is coming out.
Yeah, exactly. Another good thing which I can think about is, hey, this could be a major change in the entire global trading ecosystem. And again, trading as in goods trades, right?
Yeah.
So when huge changes happen, opportunities also emerge. Along with all the threats and the problems which we discussed earlier, there could be opportunities as well.
Yeah.
So whoever is active enough, whoever is intelligent enough, whoever is smart enough can actually use these opportunities and build something very good out of it. For example, I'll just make up an example here. Say a country like Vietnam is exporting a lot of garments
Correct.
to the US, and now because of this, say US has started tariffing Vietnam very high, that the garment export from Vietnam to US maybe might not make sense anymore.
Yeah, let's say 40%.
Let's say that. But India's tariffed only at 27%. So now maybe India's garment export to the US might be lucrative
Correct.
than
Yes.
Vietnam's export. Just an example. So like this, there could be small opportunities here and there. So if Indian entrepreneurs can sport those, or Indian listed companies can sport those, maybe those are great opportunities that we can also benefit from if those companies are listed. So I think, while we could become a pessimist and look at the bad side of things, we could put on an optimist hat and find good opportunities, and maybe those could also be beneficial.
Yeah, exactly. And there are few people again arguing that maybe India should also stand strong and do a reciprocal tariff. So now, Trump is doing that. So maybe India should also increase the tariffs. They should not let Tesla come into India, because if these tariffs are, reduced, maybe those manufacturers come into India and Tata Motors can take a hit, Mahindra can take a hit. So they should not let other competition get to it. We should also increase our tariffs. This whole reciprocal tariff war is also a narrative that is coming out. But are we even in a stage where we can fight with US with this tariff?
Before talking about India, I think we should talk about China, because after all, China is one of the most heavily tariffed nations by the US. Nearly 54% tariff to China.
Yeah.
So China has come out and said that, hey, we are going to fight back. We are going to tax you even higher. You better stop this and go back. Right? But I don't think India is going to do that. In fact, the Prime Minister's office has said that India is looking for a swift deal with the US, a new trade agreement which is supposed to come out and materialize in September, where we'll be negotiating to reduce the tariffs, and the US will be negotiating to increase the imports into India, as we said earlier.
Good.
That is going to happen. The last minute works, yes, obviously it will take some time, but I think by September, all this news scenarios will start dying down. Things will start becoming normal again. I think that's what's going to happen.
So after understanding everything, what is the trade war that is happening, how it is good, bad, sectors that could impact and everything, will actually Indian economy suffer due to Trump's tariff, and should an investor be worried about?
As Sharik said, when the US sneezes, everyone catches a cold. So if the US economy goes into a recession like it is being predicted right now, the entire world will definitely have an impact, and our markets will also see an impact. So if the US market keeps on falling, I am pretty sure that FIAs could start heavily selling in the Indian markets, and our markets could also start going down. But if the US stabilizes and thinks it's just a knee-jerk reaction, it starts going up next week, then there is not much to worry about.
So for in a short time, the markets could correct a little bit, but then again, there is a hope of recovery.
Yeah, and over the long term, it depends, right? So Trump has said that even yesterday, Trump said that, hey, Modi is a great friend. But India is very, very hard to deal with. So if India actually becomes a friend to the US, this scenario, which we talked about earlier, could play out, which is that Indian imports into the US would become much more lucrative. Others are enemies. India is a friend. There is an arbitrage opportunity. There is an opportunity to make money. Indian companies will thrive that way in the long term.
Oh yeah, and then the follow-up question obviously that is coming into my mind is, should we change our portfolio structure or should we rebalance our portfolio because of the Trump's tariff?
Sorry to begin with a very boring answer which I keep giving. If you're a long-term investor who is having diversified mutual fund basket, you should not necessarily do anything to your portfolio right now. Keep that diversification on and stay invested for the long term. So that's the boring answer. But now, if you are an active investor who wants to optimize for any change which is happening, trying to maximize returns and trying to reduce losses in your portfolio, then probably few things that you can look at. IT, even though like we discussed, IT is not being affected by this increased tariff, but things do not look good for IT at the moment. So maybe if you can think about reducing exposure to IT, that's something that someone can do. Number 3 is, like we discussed before, when such things are happening, there could be hidden gems, hidden opportunities which are available out there. Some company which could be benefiting from the whole trade war and could do really well, maybe find those hidden opportunities and make big money there. So these are things that people can do.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we should do another podcast again featuring when the renegotiating happens, some new tariff structure comes in specifically for our country. Maybe we should actually do an in-depth analysis and do a dedicated podcast onto what sectors we can look into and what are those hidden gems. Maybe we should do a dedicated dedicated video as well.
5 companies which can benefit from the renegotiated tariff.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And that's where we should wrap up the 20th episode of the Aftermarket Podcast. I think we were able to break down a very complex and fearful subject into very simple terms and try to make people aware that it's not that huge of a deal that everything is going to break down from tomorrow. Right?
Yeah, when I see news channels, there is only fear mongering everywhere. And now I think after watching our podcast, they should have much more peace.
and also not in the right sense, right?
Correct.
If they were fear mongering saying that, hey, US is going to into a recession and things could go bad, then I was okay with it.
Correct.
But when they say that, hey, this tariffs is going to break India's exports into the US, they're not understanding the fact that IT is not tariffed. Right? So all these nuances I hope we were able to bring out and that all of you enjoyed the show. As always, you're the 4th host and participant in this conversation. So make sure you let us know any and all of your thoughts in the comments down below. We read all of them, let it be positive or negative, and we try to improve each and every single episode. So yes, this is Ajay Ajit signing off. See you all again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.